Hi everybody and welcome back. You may be wondering where I am right now. Well, this is the fossil laboratory of the Jermanzburg region. I lately had to do a lot of work here, which you will hopefully see more of in the future. But enough of that. As of right now, there is one Jermanzburg fossil that I've shown to you, the Fanart line, which was discovered by Asper Blocks. This proves that the Jermanzburg region was indeed populated by Fakemon back in the ancient times. And today I want to show you two more Jermanzburg fossils, which we recently discovered. Let's start with the first so-called painted fossil. It is a thin plate with 7 not so randomly placed dots and a circle in the middle. Even though it is called a fossil, the patterns on top of it are not actually fossil parts. They were painted on the plate by humans. However, scans showed that in the inside there actually are parts of a once alive Fakemon. So let's revive it. Unfortunately for me, the most famous fossil from Germany, the Archaeopteryx from Solnhofen, already has been turned into an official Pokémon, so I had to choose something different. I don't remember how I got the idea of creating a Ray Fakemon, but the fossils I found online looked really cool and gave me an idea that in the end I threw overboard, but I still went with a Ray nonetheless. It took me several attempts to get a pose I liked, since rays are basically flat ocean pancakes and it was really hard to find a simple pose that looked somewhat dynamic. Rays have these cool wobbly movable fins, but I left that one out in the first stage. At one point I had a pose I liked, but it was super flat, so I used the Coloray tool to change the perspective and then adjust the design. My first pass at the colors was green and yellow, which I really liked, but it wasn't fitting for the theme I originally had planned. My second attempt on the colors was the sand and golden color, because I wanted this fossil to have an angelic theme. For some reason the ray fossil reminded me of angel wings, so I thought one could be the angelic one and the other one would be a demonic one, but the idea didn't convince me even while I was drawing. So I switched themes mid-design and the demonic versus angelic part is only visible in the shiny forms. Anyways, a few elements still originate from that theme. Biblical accurate angels are pretty cool and terrifying looking with a bunch of eyes and rings floating around. The multiple eyes were what I choose to represent in this design, however they are not actual eyes, they are just markings. In the end I once again switched colors, dark brown that goes heavily into grey to look like rock, red because a lot of cave paintings were made with red paint. It is also a color used in the Roman Empire for royals. And then blue because it's a hard color to produce naturally. Red, brown and yellow are relatively easy to get via different earth, but blue is pretty rare. So here it is, Coloray. The name obviously combines the words color and ray, and it is a pure rock type for now. This fossil Fakemon represents the art form of painting or cave painting, and its counterpart will represent a different art form. I don't think I've ever had this much trouble finding a pose. It was even worse than it was with the first form. I wanted to show more of the wings. The way rays are moving their fins is super fascinating and nice to look at, but hard to draw. Perspective-wise and logic-wise, I just couldn't handle it. Then I thought, what if it's not just a ray? Let's mix in some dragon, because my sketches kinda gave me like the vibe of how to train your dragons, and that helped me a bit to make the design more interesting, but it was still a struggle. At one point I made the body more serpentine-like and added some random floating spikes to the tail, which made no sense, so I removed them and then streamlined the whole body down a bit, after a friend pointed out some perspective issues. I gave it front paws, so now it can walk around. It also has hind legs, but they're covered up by the body, so you can't see them right now. To further work out the theme of painting, I added two elements that are important for the development of art itself. First, I added some striped patterns on the side of its body and on its tail, which is inspired by a shading technique where basically black lines next to each other are used to create the effect of shadow and dimension. And the second element is mixing colors. Like in the first stage, this Fakemon has blue and red patterns, however it now also has large purple colored spots. Because, well, blue plus red makes purple. Side note, the purple is an actual mix of the red and blue tones I used, and when I fused them I accidentally made the bi flag, So yeah, this fake one accidentally became a walking by flag and I don't mind it. Even though the ray was my main inspiration, the finished design also kinda looks like a horseshoe crab, which I think is good because most people will be more likely to connect a horseshoe crab to the prehistoric era than a ray. And after like 2 or 2.5 hours working on the design, I started to become frustrated and nearly made a whole new fake one, but I didn't because I already had spent so much time in this line, and in the end I'm relatively happy with it and I'm glad I stick with it. Coloray evolves into Spectray, a rock and dragon type. The name is a fusion of color spectrum and ray. Even though it is based on a ray, the resurrected form is able to walk around on land. Their colorful spots are always wet and leave behind patterns when they bump into things or jump against, for example, mouse. It is believed that these fakemon inspired the ancient people of the region to create paintings similar to the spots left behind. Up to the second line. In contrast to the flat painted fossil, you get to see the massive boulder-like fossil called the engraved fossil. This isn't really a fossil in the common sense, however there are traces of this fakemon's claws found in the engravings which were made by it slashing at this rock. If you resurrect it, you will get this fakemon. So this fakemon also went through a few conceptual stages and changes. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to make a fakemon based on the Löwenmensch from Hohenstein-Stadel, which is this half-human, half-lion hybrid made out of ivory. For the pose I at first went with a sphinx-like one, because the Egyptian sphinx are also human and lion hybrids, so I thought it's, layers and stuff. However, I figured that since the upstanding figure is the main inspiration, this fakemon should also be upstanding. The ears are shaped like demon horns, since at this point I was still trying to make the angel demon thing work. I wanted to give this stage a more childlike personality, since it is a first stage, so it is in a happy jumping around pose. Its eyes bugged me, so I created this weird, almost spiral-like engraving looking pairs of eyes. At first it had 2 whiskers on each side, however I removed one to simplify it. Also, since it is just a lion cub, it doesn't have a full mane yet, only a few tufts of hair on top of its head and on the side. On its chest are patterns that are supposed to look like a stylized mane. Its paws are pretty flat and the claws are supposed to look like they were engraved into ivory. I also changed the mouth because it was better fitting for its evolution. As you've probably recognized by now, the overall theme of these two fossils are the art forms of painting versus the art form of engravings. Both can be found in the prehistoric time of the real world. However, I have to admit, since these themes were added later and I didn't have them in mind primarily, these concepts probably could have been executed better. However, since I still have a few categories of fakemon that are somewhat necessary for a complete dex to fill out, I decided I don't want to give it another pass, and I'm happy enough with my results. And here is Felitho. The name is a fusion of feline and litho, the Greek term for stone. It is a pure rock type for now. Felitho are very energetic creatures, which like to slash its fangs at walls and rocks. Their markings can still be found in the region several thousand of years later. Sometimes, in very rare occasions, both ink splatters of Coloray and slash markings of Felitho can be seen together. And the last design for today, the evolution. I have designed a few first stage fossils, however I never designed their evolutions, and after having to make evolution for these two, I'm a bit scared to evolve all the other fossil fakemon I've made so far, because, as I've already said, I kinda struggled. The base of what I wanted to do was pretty obvious, some sort of human-lion hybrid with giant claws. That felt like a natural progression from the first stage. However, these more humanoid-shaped fakemon are my least favorite ones to draw, so I struggled a bit. But I think it did work out somehow. Its mane is now way larger and takes up most of the silhouette. I wanted it to almost look like either demon wings or like a cape made out of fur. So it gives off the impression of like an evil overlord, because once again the demon theme was still a thing. The mane looks rather flat, and I thought about giving it more volume, however I thought that it's actually fitting for it to be flat, since it may give off the impression that it was carved out of a flat piece of ivory or stone. It has a giant grin which can look dangerous, however it's just a happy guy that likes to smile. The main part on its chest is now no longer engraved but laying on top. While I was already busy with the coloring process, I added one last element, the stereotypical bone through the hair, which you often see in these inaccurate caveman depictions. I thought the mane looked a bit empty, so I just added the bone for style points. Also, since the Coloray line has some elements of the evolution of painting, I also wanted to add an element of evolution to the method of engraving. In the beginning, stuff like stone tools were used and later metal tools, once metal was actually a material to work with. So now its claws are made out of steel, which also gives it its secondary typing. And here it is, Lithion, a rock and steel type. The name is a fusion of Felitho and lion. Since their claws are now made out of steel, they can slash through even harder material. It is speculated that humans in the prehistoric time were inspired to use different materials for stoneworking after seeing Felitho evolve and changing its claws. So here's the main fossil duo of the Jermanzburg region. At one point you will get to choose between one of these two, however you can always get the other one later. Not a fan when you need other people to complete your Pokédex by trading and stuff like that. Fanart is obviously not part of this duo. The line is its own standalone fakemon that you can get through a quest after some Fanarts broke out of a laboratory and you help to catch them. So I hope you like these two fossil mons. Please let me know which one you would choose to revive first. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel and see you in the comments.